African Development Bank's 52nd annual meetings was held in Gujarat, India in May 2017. The event was well attended by the bank's governors, who are the finance, trade or economic development ministers from its 54 regional and 26 non-regional member countries, as well as many stakeholders. About 3,000 delegates and participants from all over the world came together to debate key issues facing Africa's development. The performance of the bank with regards to delivering on its mandate and plans for the future, the closest on the map being the year 2018. The African Development Bank has a mandate to accelerate sustainable economic development and social progress in each of its regional member countries, thereby contributing to the reduction of poverty. Within the next hour, you will be watching highlights of the bank's activities geared towards demonstrating its calling to take Africa on a pathway out of poverty. Hello and welcome. I am Christy Cole.
I'm delighted to be here today to celebrate with the African Development Bank the commissioning of its Nigeria country office complex.
This indeed is a major milestone in the evolution of the AFDB, and I congratulate you. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this day stands as a testimony to the reality of a much cherished and long-held aspiration, and indeed a very important event in the partnership between Nigeria and the African Development Bank.
From the launch of the AFDB's state-of-the-art Nigeria complex in the country's capital, Abuja, to the release of its annual flagship report, the African Economic Outlook 2018, the bank's activities, all geared towards driving what it calls the high fives, have received positive reviews. The AFDB's high five focus on lighting up, powering, feeding, industrializing, integrating, and improving the quality of life in Africa. The latest round of accolades for the AFDB comes on the back of its launch of the historical Nigerian office.
Our investments are structured around high five priorities: light up and power Africa, feed Africa, industrialize Africa, integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life of the people of Africa. We've invested $500 million in the Development Bank of Nigeria. We expanded private equity investment in agriculture, and it's good to see the Minister of Agriculture who succeeded me here. We put in $18 million into the Fund for Financing Agriculture in Nigeria. This year, we will also be investing $200 million in the Transmission Company of Nigeria to support the rehabilitation of existing transmission lines in partnership with the World Bank. We've invested $100 million in the mainstream power IPP in Jeba and Kainji to add 700 megawatts to the national grid. Thank you. Our private sector investment includes $300 million in Dangote Industries to promote refining of petroleum products, and $100 million to support Indorama Fertilizer Company, as part of a $1.2 billion syndicated loan that will provide Nigeria with the capacity to produce 1.4 million metric tons of fertilizers and expected to generate $2.1 billion in export earnings over the project life cycle. We've also invested an additional $134 million in Olam in agriculture. We are providing $263 million towards the rehabilitation of basic livelihoods in the northeast of Nigeria, with the expectation of providing water, sanitation, hygiene, and health services that will impact 14 million people, including 1.9 million internally displaced people. Our support of $85 million to the Lekki Concession Company helped construct 50 kilometers of Lekki-Ekpe Expressway. This was the first public-private infrastructure partnership in Nigeria, and we look forward to supporting more in infrastructure in Nigeria. Our support extends to the financial sector, and I see so many of the CEOs of the banks here today. Several Nigerian banks have benefited from $1.8 billion in lines of credit, including Access Bank, Fidelity Bank, Stanbic IBTC Bank, the First Bank, Wema Bank, the Zenith Bank, the GT Bank, the Bank of Industry, the Bank of Agriculture, and also Nexim, among others. Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, this edifice further beautifies our enormous investments in Nigeria and is very befitting for Nigeria. As you have noticed, the building's color is green. Green means prosperity. It is indeed my prayer that Nigeria itself will prosper and that the African Development Bank will be there always as a strategic partner in Nigeria's prosperity. Nigeria's prosperity is always shared with other African countries. Nigeria's establishment of the $500 million Nigerian Trust Fund at the African Development Bank has supported so many African countries and remains a key part of the African Development Bank group. Nigeria's share capital at the bank will continue to be crucial as we look forward towards a general capital increase for the bank. We look to Nigeria's strong support. This building makes a bold statement, specifically that the African Development Bank is here to stay in Nigeria. It sends a very strong message that the African Development Bank appreciates Nigeria. And it sends a message that Nigeria's place in the integration of Africa, especially in West Africa, cannot be ignored. And we cannot ignore the fact that Africa's largest economy is now out of recession and projected to grow at 2.3% this year.
First stop at the launch is the Afdb'S presser to give stakeholders insight into why the Development Bank's first ever permanent office is located in Nigeria, outside its Côte d'Ivoire base.
The board has decided that clearly Nigeria, by any metrics in this continent, Nigeria is the largest, right? So it absolutely makes sense to show that commitment in your shareholder, largest shareholder, but also a country where you have so much operations going on. There's value for money in having that kind of decision made. It's significant also because when the board made that decision in 2009, the idea was that you start with a prototype. So this is the prototype. It's the first building that we have done. But as we do the same things in the other regions, this will be the model that I think will be rolled out in the other areas as well.
In an exclusive with CNBC Africa, Faal Ibrima says the new office is crucial to its regional integration and will enhance the Afdb'S relations to Africa.
The building actually goes back to about 2009. The bank started a decentralization program in which the bank made a decision to move closely or closer to its clients. So that process started out with a few countries, Nigeria being one of them. And we started out in Lagos at the time in 1971 with 5 staff members, a very small office, very small operations, less than 5 million, I think at the time was the lending that we had in the country. But over time, clearly, the significance of Nigeria as the #1 economy in the continent, the most populous also, and also the most politically influential country. But more importantly for us, Nigeria is the largest shareholder of the African Development Bank. That's critically important. And critically important also, Nigeria provides a third window, lending window for the bank. Nigeria, our program at the moment in Nigeria ranges between 5.5 billion to 6 billion a year. The total portfolio. An annual program ranging anywhere from $500 million to $1 billion a year. So that's a large portfolio. The Nigeria active portfolio alone is larger than the bank's portfolio in most of the regions, if you take the average of the region. So that's a large engagement. And I think while the decision was made to choose Nigeria, it also now coincides with the fact that it is the most important in terms of portfolio, of course, together with South Africa and some of the North African countries. This particular building is also crucial in terms of the regional integration agenda of the bank. As you know, our charter enshrines regional integration in there. Together, the bank, together with Nigeria and ECOWAS, I think will really move the regional integration agenda forward. We already are doing a lot in that space, but we know that more can be done, and I think this office is also going to be quite instrumental in pushing that agenda forward. The Nigeria Trust Fund was established in 1976 by the Nigerian government. At the time, it was around the time that oil prices were beginning to really escalate quite a bit, and Nigeria was making quite a bit of rent from that. Nigeria recognized the hardships that other African countries were going through because of the higher oil prices at the time, and also the difficulties of having development spending in those countries. So Nigeria established a trust fund that is still managed by the bank to assist those countries, both in terms of their own individual development programs, but also as a region, to see what regional projects can be supported through the Nigeria Trust Fund. That fund has now grown to over 500 million, and it has implemented hundreds of projects across the continent. So it's a very important window of the bank. Yeah. Associated with the Nigerian Trust Fund is what we call the Nigeria Technical Capacity Fund. And that fund, as the name implies, also it's a smaller fund of 25 million, but it supports capacity building in the member countries of the African Development Bank. So yes, Nigeria is is taking quite a leadership role in terms of the African Development Bank.
Okay, so now let's look now at the project pipelines that we have in Nigeria. You know how the bank has been cooperating with Nigeria. So can you speak to the project in the pipeline over the years and what we're expecting to see going forward?
The current active portfolio of Nigeria is about $5.5 billion. And it's divided almost 50-50 between lending to the public sector and lending to the private sector. In the public sector, of course, we've supported the usual infrastructure projects, roads, agriculture, human development, capital development, education, etc. Whereas in the private sector, we have been able to support, through lines of credits mostly, lending to SMEs. As you know, most of the jobs that are being created through the SME window. So we provided a lot of lines of credits to many banks in Nigeria to on-lend now to the SMEs. That has been one large activity. In the private sector also, we have supported some very important life-changing projects. One that comes to mind is the Lekki Toll Road. You know, I think that before the Lekki Toll Road was built, people had to wake up around 4 o'clock, you know, to try to get to the center in Lagos. We think it's an important project that has actually changed lives, because I think people can now go to work much later and then get home also much earlier than they could have without the toll road. There's also the Indorama fertilizer project, which was also financed by the bank. And in fact, that has been so successful that we are now considering this year a second loan to Indorama to expand their fertilizer operations to the rest of the African continent.